a little game. And it's a word association game, or a name association game. So I'll say a word or a name, and I want you to respond with the name that comes to mind in connection with my name. So let's start with some easy ones. Bert and... Batman and... Jack and... Yeah, you're very good at this game. So another easy one. How about Tom and... Okay. Would you like me to make it a little harder for you? How about, and this will show your age, Simon and... Oh my goodness. Okay. How about Laverne and... Okay, one for the younger ones. SpongeBob and... Oh, there's a few of you. Yep, well done. One more. Frodo and... Oh, yeah, got some of you then. Yep, we've got some Lord of the Rings fans. Now for the final name. Samson and... Yeah, so I'm playing this game with you just so I can ask these questions. For those of you that have grown up in the church, when you hear the name Samson, do you automatically associate it with Delilah? Or is it just me? And I think that I associate Delilah with Samson because it's that part of the story that seems to get told the most. Yet the story of Samson and Delilah is only a tiny fraction of Samson's story. For example, did you know that Samson ruled over Israel, or to be more accurate, was her judge for 20 years? Prior to meeting Delilah, Samson was the judge of Israel. Yet what do we mostly remember him for? His encounter with Delilah. Now, if you don't know the story or you're struggling to recall it, let me share with you. This is my shortened version of the story. For many years, for 20 years, Samson wreaked havoc on his neighbours, the Philistines. And he could do so because of his extraordinary strength. But as you would expect, the Philistines didn't like Samson very much. And so they plotted to rid their lives of him. And it just so happens that Samson had fallen in love with a Philistine woman named Delilah. And so the rulers of the Philistines approached Delilah and offered her a substantial sum of money to discover the secret of Samson's strength. So Delilah agrees and begins to ask Samson about the source of his power. But at first, Samson deceives her, telling her that if he is bound with 7 fresh bowstrings, he will become weak. So Delilah tries this, but when the Philistines come to capture him, he effortlessly breaks free. Now, Delilah is obviously upset that Samson has lied to her, but nevertheless, she tries again and she asks him, what is the secret of his strength? And so this time, Samson tells her that if he is tied with new ropes, he will be weak. So once again, Delilah tries this, but again he breaks free when the Philistines attack. So what does Delilah do? Well, according to the Bible, and this is a direct quote, she nags him and nags him and nags him and nags him again. Samson, do you love me? Samson, do you love me? And if you do, then tell me, please, what's the secret of your strength? And worn out by her persistent questioning, Samson finally tells her the truth. My strength, says Samson, comes from my uncut hair. For at birth, I was dedicated to God as a Nazirite. Now, if you're unaware of the Nazirite vow, it consisted of refraining from three things. Any product made from grapes, so wine or vinegar. The cutting of your hair. And then thirdly, you were not to become ritually unclean by making contact with a dead person or a corpse, or you weren't allowed to go into the graveyard. So coming back to the story, Samson finally shares with Delilah the secret of his strength. So what does Delilah do? On realising that Samson had told her the truth, she lulls Samson to sleep on her lap, and then she has a servant shave off his hair. And then when he's finished, she woke Samson up. "Samson," she cries to him, "the Philistines have come to capture you." But when Samson woke up, he thought, "I will do as before and shake myself free." But that's not what happens. Instead, when the Philistines come to capture him, he finds that he has lost his strength. So they seize him, they gouge out his eyes, and they take him to Gaza, where he is imprisoned and forced to grind grain. And why? Because, and I think this is one of the saddest lines in the whole of the Bible, he didn't realise that the Lord had left him. What a tragic way to live. Unaware that God is not with you. And I think it was this way for Samson, because he seems like he had little respect for the gift of strength that God had given to him. You know, rather he treats his strength as a game, something to play around with. You know, tie me up, braid my hair, cut it all off, do whatever you wish, because it won't affect me or my relationship with God. I will go out as before and shake myself free. Or to put it another way, I can do this on my own, is what he is saying. You know, I can play games and flirt with danger, and it won't affect me or my relationships or my marriage or my standing in society or my career or my home life or my whatever you wish to insert here. I will go as before and shake myself free. Maybe. And maybe you'll get away with it. Once, twice, maybe even 3 times. Who knows? But even so, know this: there will come a time when you can no longer shake it off. I will go out as before and shake myself free, says Samson. And what happens? He loses everything. He loses his sight, his strength, and ultimately his freedom. What a sorry way to live. Distant from God, weak and in despair. Yet even so, I tell this story for one simple reason. Over the last few weeks, we've been working our way through Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus. And Paul was writing to them because he was concerned for them. He was concerned for their holiness, or their godliness, or their Christ-likeness, their desire to be like Christ. And the people that Paul was writing to were a lot like us today. Although they followed the ways of Christ, they struggled with the same things that you and I may struggle with. And they were things like this, says Paul: bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, addiction, selflessness, malice, revenge, greed, obscenity, foolish talk, coarse jokes, drunkenness, and so forth. And I have to admit that Paul's list is rather extensive. Yet I think it's extensive and rather wide-ranging, so we can make this point. People, there is a battle going on. And it's a battle for your soul. And just like Samson, this battle, whatever it may be for you, if left on its own, has the potential to wear you down, sapping your strength and ultimately drawing you away from God. And so to prevent this from happening, Paul offers this advice to the church in Ephesus and ultimately to us: be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on every piece of God's armour so that you will be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will still be standing firm. Stand your ground, putting on the belt of truth and the body armour of God's righteousness. For shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news, so that you will be fully prepared. In addition to all these, hold up the shield of faith to stop the fiery arrows of the devil. Put on salvation as your helmet, and take the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, and pray at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and pray persistently for all believers everywhere. And so there's a battle going on. And as I've already said, it's a battle for our soul. And in this battle, Paul is calling us to a number of things. Firstly, to be strong. To be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Listen to these words from the book of Isaiah. The Lord looked and was displeased to find there was no justice. He was amazed to see that no one intervened to help the oppressed. So he himself stepped in to save them with his strong arm, and his justice sustained him. He put on righteousness as his breastplate and placed the helmet of salvation on his head. He clothed himself with a robe of vengeance and wrapped himself in a cloak of divine passion. And he wore righteousness like a belt of truth, and truth like an undergarment. So Paul's point is this. He's saying your battle, whatever it is that you are facing, you cannot be won on your own or in your own strength. You need God. So let God fight your battle, is what Paul is saying here. And you do this not by running away, but by standing firm, standing strong in the Lord and his mighty power. There's a brilliant little story about Elisha in the Old Testament. And Elisha was a prophet, a spokesperson for God. And one morning, he and his servant stepped out of their tent to find that an enemy army surrounded them. Now, the servant, seeing all these soldiers and chariots and horses surrounding them, turned to Elisha and says, "What do we do now?" And I'd imagine that he expected Elisha to say, "Run! Run! That's what we should do now." But Elisha doesn't say that. Instead, looking at the vast army, he turns to his servant and says, "There is a lot of them on their side, I give you that. But even still, we have more on our side than their side." And at this, the servant thinks to himself that Elisha's lost his mind. So he points to Elisha and counts 1, and then to himself and counts 2. And then he turns back to Elisha and he says, "Hey mate, I think you need to count again. Because I can only count 2 of us, and there's what? How many thousands of them? To which Elijah replies, look up. Look up. And as the young man does, what he sees astounds him. For all along the ridge of the hillside is God's army. And it's an army far greater and far stronger in number than what confronts them. So coming back to our battle for holiness or godliness or Christ-likeness, our battle for purity to do the right thing at the right time, our battle against addiction or selfishness or bitterness or rage or anger or brawling or slander, our battle against those things that want to tear us down, things like malice or revenge or greed, or our battle against deceitful desires or obscenity or foolish talk or coarse jokes, or your battle for your marriage or for your children or for your grandchildren or for your relationships. Your battle. Did I leave anything out? Your battle. Whatever it is that you are facing cannot be won on your own or in your own strength. You need God. So what is it that you're struggling with? What is it that haunts you? What is it that grips you or causes you to doubt? Or what is it that is robbing you of your faith or taking you away from your relationship with God and with others? Whatever it is, in those moments when the enemy looks strong or when it looks like it's surrounding you, Paul says that in those moments, you shouldn't try to fight them on your own or in your own strength. Instead, stand firm. Stand your ground. Look up to God and pray. Pray at all times, says Paul, and on every occasion. Stay alert and pray persistently. Pray always, in all things, for all and always. So as I begin to wrap up, let me first loop back round to the story of Samson. Because Samson's story starts so positively. Now listen to these words. When he was born, his mother named him Samson. And the Lord blessed him as he grew up. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir within him. Which has me ask, what happened? What went so wrong for Samson? For 20 years, he led the people of Israel. But then what happened? But then what went wrong? So here's my final takeaway. How do you protect yourself from the but then moments in life? Well, Paul puts it this way. Never forget that there's a battle going on, and it's a battle for your soul, for your holiness or your desire to be like Christ. But don't fear. All is not lost. Here's what you're to do. Stand firm in God, letting God fight your battle. Pray continuously to God about your battles. And finally, dress as God. Or to use Paul's words, put on every piece of God's armour so that you'll be able to resist the enemy in times of evil. Put on every piece, or be clothed, or dress as God. These phrases that we use today are just a fancy way to say, be enabled. Be enabled. The Greek word that's used in this language that Paul uses, it simply means to be equipped, to be enabled, to be empowered in the virtues or the ways of God. Which means that the armour of God is not just something to be worn, but to be lived. And so if you wish to protect yourself from the battle, from the but-then things of life, or those things that want to trip you up, Paul is saying, allow God to empower you. Let God empower you in a way so that you live a life filled with truth and integrity. And let God empower you so that you can live a life that seeks peace and exemplifies faithfulness or righteousness. Allow God to empower you in a way so that you will be confident in your salvation and you would offer salvation to others. And live in a way led by the Holy Spirit's promptings and the good news of God and the never-ending power of prayer. Now, I can't say this enough, and I'll finish on this note. It's God that empowers you to live life well. This same Spirit that was stirring in Samson is stirring in us. And it equips us and it empowers us to live for Christ and to live like Christ. And I think Jesus said it best. Anyone who listens to my teachings, Jesus' teachings, and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the flood waters rise and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it's built on God's bedrock. Do this, says Paul, and you will live the way of a person of strength. May God bless you.